if you are a business owner or a founder or a entrepreneur or a CXO, I don't have to tell you about the negative impacts of attrition. As far as I have experienced, most of the time, a CXO and their mind space of the founders and entrepreneurs and business owners is occupied with attrition. And attrition has a lot of negative impacts. For example, every time an employee walks out or attrition happens, you have to spend extra money to hire the replacement, train them, and bring them up to speed so that they can start generating revenue for your business. Every time an employee walks out, a lot of institutional knowledge and experience goes out of the window. A lot of domain expertise, domain knowledge, etc. Every time an employee walks out, there is a productivity dip, because the moment attrition happens and people leave, the remaining team, they have to pick up the slack. So there is a productivity dip immediately every time there is attrition, right? So I don't have to teach you about the negative consequences or negative impacts of attrition. But while your world looks like this, and you have accepted that attrition is going to be there and these consequences we have to deal with, in the same world, there exist businesses where attrition is less than 5%, where attrition is less than 3%. So if this is a problem you would like to tackle head on, give me just 10 minutes and I'll give you a couple of atomic habits or organizational practices that you can take back and deploy inside your company to get rid of the negative impacts of attrition. Okay? But if attrition is not a problem for you and it's not occupying your mental space, then you can ignore this video. Okay? But if it is a problem that you need to address, let's begin. The first atomic habit that I have in mind is what I call the deal breaker manifesto. The deal breaker manifesto. What it means is every time going forward, after today, every time you have a job opening that goes on to any of the platforms, whether it's LinkedIn, Shine, Naukri, Monster, every time you post a job opening, along with the traditional sections like experience, education, eligibility criteria, etc., location, etc., add a new section, bold title, Deal Breaker Manifesto. In that, you have to add 2 or 3 sentences, not more than that, 2 or 3 sentences that describe your organizational culture's DNA, what it feels like to work inside that company. I have a couple of examples here. I'm going to read them out to you so that you get an idea about how to phrase this deal breaker manifesto with 2 to 3 sentences and put it into your job postings going forward. For example, the deal breaker manifesto always starts with one phrase. The phrase is, "You will hate working here if," then your cultural DNA. Sentences describing your cultural DNA. For example, if you are a performance first company, then your deal breaker manifesto could read like, "You will hate working here if you need constant supervision, if you hate feedback or prefer structure over speed. This isn't a place for comfort. This place is for people who crave growth, urgency, and radical ownership." Second example, for a creativity first, chaos tolerant culture, your deal breaker manifesto could read like, "You will hate working here if you need step-by-step instructions or you fear messy drafts, because we value unfinished ideas over polished silence. If ambiguity drains you or experimentation feels messy or risky, this is not a place for you. The third example is, if your company or your culture is a customer obsessed, service led culture, your deal breaker manifesto could read like, you will hate working here if you think this is not my job is ever an acceptable answer. We serve our customers like it's personal, and in our company, titles matter less than impact. We expect everyone to own the customer's experience from start to finish, from top to bottom. These are some of the deal breaker manifestos. Why it works is it initiates or it triggers something called cultural self selection. Misfits to this culture will stop applying, which will improve your application to interview ratio, interview to offer acceptance ratio, and your first year retention also. That's why this is not something random, I'm telling you. This is something that has been tested in the market in different forms. And I have been teaching it for almost half a decade. And every time it has produced results, improved retention, employee retention. Okay. And are there parallels like this in the industry? Of course, there are. There is Zappos, which after 4 weeks of training offers $2,000 to the new joinees. If they're a misfit, they find there is a cultural misfit between Zappos and this new hire, they can leave the company and they'll be paid $2,000. That's how important cultural fit is. But a lot of times, business owners, CXOs, and entrepreneurs or founders ignore this cultural fit while hiring, which leads to a lot of bleeding basically. Okay, so that's the first organizational practice I wanted to share with you. Take this organizational practice, implement it for 6 months inside your company, and what you will have is experience, and then you will be positioned better to make experience based decisions. Okay, experience based decisions. Now, are there any rules? Yes, there are rules. Deal breaker manifesto must be part of every job opening inside your company that goes onto any platform. Second, every 6 months, this needs to update, because culture, organizational culture is a living, breathing organization, living, breathing animal. It evolves. So every 6 months, you go and check what your organizational DNA sounds like, those 2-3 sentences, and modify them to reflect the current state of your organizational DNA. So those are the rules. Okay, let's move on to organizational habit number 2. This is what I call the PMS check, which means every 6 months, all the managers inside your company, they talk to each of their direct reportees one-on-one. First is purpose fit. The manager asks a question to the employee, what is that one part of your job which makes you filled with energy, which makes you feel alive, and why? This will help you understand the employee's purpose and how strongly does it align with the organizational mission and vision. This alignment is key for long-term employee retention. Okay, PMS, so P is purpose fit, M is for misfit, where the manager is supposed to ask the employee, what is one thing, one part of your job, one task, one aspect of your job which is draining your energy, which is draining you emotionally, and if taken away, it will ensure that you will stay with us, you will stay with this company for a long term, right? So that's the misfit related question. PMS, S stands for stretch zone. Here the manager is supposed to ask the employee, what is that one skill or one challenge that you want to pick up this year, even if it feels a little scary. right? So once you are done with this, take the input from the employee and spend 45 minutes with the same employee to make 15 to 20% redesign of his roles, his or her roles and responsibilities. 80 to 85% of the roles and responsibilities of that employee remain same, but 15 to 20% are redesigned to give them the opportunity to work on things that matter to them, to get rid of things that are impacting them negatively, and to learn something that's going to help them improve their career graph, right? Why this works is, first of all, it builds a lot of trust between the manager and the team members. Second, instead of feeling like they're just communicated what's happening to their career, the employees become co-architects of their career graph. That is crucial. That is life altering for a lot of people, right? So that is why this matters. Are there rules about this? Yes, this is mandatory and must happen every 6 months for all the employees of the company. And the next time the manager and the employee meet, they must reassess and track the progress on what new responsibilities, new roles were given, what new challenges and new skills were supposed to be learned, and what progress they have made. And accordingly, they ask the same 3 questions, and then they make the same redesign of their roles and responsibilities, and this continues. This basically helps the employees see themselves their long-term career progression inside the company. That visibility is provided through this process. Okay, so this is the second organizational practice that I wanted to share with you, which is called the PMS check. So those are the 2 things I wanted to share with you in this video. So what I want you to do now, what I encourage you to do now, insist you to do now, urge you to do now, is go back and implement this inside your company and see what it does to your attrition. Your opinions will not matter. Your experience will. So go ahead, run a 6-month experiment on both these organizational practices and see what's happening to your attrition, or maybe a 12-month experiment, and then what it does to your attrition. Once you have that experience, let's sit and discuss where to go from there. Okay, I hope you find this valuable. I hope this is going to help you keep your attrition in control and build an organization where people love to work and stay. Okay, with that, I'll leave you in this video. I'll see you in the future video whenever that happens. Till then, take care and be limitless.